Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Umar Khalid. But today is Friday, the 28th of June 2024, and these are the stories that we will be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin with the US presidential debate. The first of the US presidential debates under the auspices of the CNN was recently held in the United States of America. It was held a little bit before the actual time of when the presidential debates actually occur. This time it was around 4 months before. But nevertheless, a lot of questions emanate out of that US presidential debate, whether it be the way Joe Biden conducted and answered the questions, whether it be the way Donald Trump also answered certain questions, and also remain true to adding a lot of falsehoods in his claims against Joe Biden. A lot of important issues were discussed between the two, whether it be immigration, whether it be the voter list, whether it be Palestine, whether it be their own internal politics, and both on all of these points had divergent points of views, apart from when it came to inflation or the economy. But even then there were certain differences. This is going to be our first segment, the US presidential debate. Our second story concerns the Iran's snap elections that were held today, where there was a lone reformist and around 61 million Iranians who are eligible to vote. In fact, 61,452,321 to be exact voters have the right to vote in this 14th presidential election. Two Iranian presidential election candidates, Alireza Zakani and Amir Hossein Ghazizadeh Hashmi, announced their withdrawal from these 2024 elections. That leaves 4 candidates in this race, and we all know why this presidential snap elections are being held, because on the 19th of May this year, a helicopter carrying the late Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, late Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian and several other officials crashed while flying from Khudafarin to Tabriz, and the Iranian President and the entire accompanying delegation were martyred as a result of this crash. The results are expected not today, but maybe in 1 or 2 days, because the votes are manually counted. So of course we'll be highlighting and updating you on that as well, but we will be discussing the whole gamut of the Iranian snap elections today in our second story. Then we'll be talking about Vienna, that has been declared the most livable city in the entire world for a third year in a row, while a lot of ratings of other cities have slumped, according to a new survey that has been published yesterday by The Economist. Vienna has come first, followed by the Danish capital Copenhagen, and Zurich in Switzerland as a third city. Melbourne in Australia and Calgary in Canada complete the top 5. Finally, we are going to talk about a Russian satellite that has broken up in space. As this satellite that had been defunct since 2022 has broken up in many pieces, and that can cause a lot of alerts, especially for the ISS that is stationed there. There were no immediate details on what caused the breakup of this RESURS/P1 Russian Earth observation satellite. US Space Command, which is tracking the debris swarm, said there was no immediate threat to other satellites. At least we can heave a sigh of relief as far as that is concerned. Let's begin with today's lineup, and that concerns, first of all, the US presidential debate. Every eye is on this US presidential debate because of the different issues that are covered in it, whether it be the foreign policy, whether it be the internal policy, whether it be the different aspects on the way the government has maneuvered itself in the last couple of years, and of course it is defended by the candidate whose government is in power, and the other one of course gives his own point of view. This was no exception to it, but of course Trump, being Trump, did what he had to do. We'll be discussing this with 3 of our guests. 2 of our guests are online and 1 guest is right here in the studios. I'll begin with my guest who is in the studios. He is none other than Dr. Tughral Yamin. He's a senior analyst. Dr. Saab, it's a pleasure to have you here because we love your analytic point of views, especially on foreign policy.
Thank you.
Our 2 guests who join us online are Syed Muhammad Ali, Dr. Syed Muhammad Ali, lecturer at the Johns Hopkins University. Ali, thank you very much to have joined us. Our second guest is Bariza Omar. She's a political analyst and she joins us from the United States. Thank you very much, Bariza, and thank you very much, Ali, to have joined us online. I'll begin with my guest in the studios and then I'll come to you. In their debate Thursday night on CNN that happened in Atlanta, it was moderated by Jake Tapper, Dana Bash. The gap between an 81-year-old incumbent and his 78-year-old challenger seemed much, much larger, and mainly because of the fact that Biden was hoarse at times unintelligible. Words often ran together. He stumbled, particularly when he tried to cite statistics and legislation. He raised rarely his voice to hammer home the points of emphasis that he had done in the last presidential debate that happened with Trump in the year 2020. Although the Democratic primary is long over, will his performance lead to more hand-wringing among the party members over whether handing Biden a second nomination with only minimal opposition was the right move? The second part of my question is, does it also raise the stakes for the 10th of September, when the second such debate is going to occur under the auspices of ABC?
Yes to both your questions. First of all, the Democrats must be really wringing their hands for giving Biden a second chance. Biden is not coherent. Biden goes to sleep, he stumbles on stairs, he's not, and that was amply proven in this debate. So the debate did go to Trump, not because Trump is a very eloquent speaker, because Trump is street smart, and he would fight. He's combative, and he knows that the other fellow will not be able to sustain the bruising attacks that he will launch. So,
the most vulnerable element of all of this was his age, that a lot of people were raising questions about, and that has, evidently been shown in this debate that there are certain issues concerning his age.
And as you yourself mentioned, Trump is not no spring chicken.
Yes, he's 78. There's 3 years difference between the two. But the gap seemed wider, didn't it?
He eats unhealthy food. He's a couch potato. He takes no exercise. But still, when it comes to verbal sparring, he's ahead of Biden. I was reading about Hillary Clinton. She said in the debate with her, he spoke nonsense to begin with, and after that it was just bluffer was a word she used. So he speaks whatever comes to his mind. He doesn't know, but he can outshout you. Perhaps he will be able to convince the redneck Americans. Anybody with grey matter would neither go here nor there. These two, as I mentioned, I think in an earlier program also, they should be sent to the geriatric ward.
All right, that's your point of view. Let's come to our two guests who are joining us online. I'll begin with you, Ali. Ali, Dr. Tughral Yamin pointed towards, of course, the age factor, but he also pointed towards Trump and his behavior. We all remember the 2020 presidential debate where Trump was outrightly, attacking Biden at that time, and that worked in Biden's favor at this time. This time also, there has been a repeat of certain things, but I'll begin with his frequent election denialism. He says he'll accept the result of the 2024 election if it's fair and legal, but then he repeats his lies about the fraud in the 2020 election, so-called quote-unquote fraud in the 2020 elections. You were a winner and you lost the first time. This is how Biden responded to it. Will this denial of the 2020 elections work in Trump's favor this time?
It's going to work in terms of certainly whipping up his support base to go out there to vote. It is going to increase the chances of there actually being violence within the US. I mean, now, for the first time in my sort of memory of following American elections, one has not seen, there's been dissent before, there's been disgruntlement with different administrations during different periods of conflict, but there has never been this fear of internal violence. And, this is something that had happened already when there was a storming of the Capitol. But, in the subsequent years, not really much has been done to address that internal sort of polarization, which has now reached a very dangerous stage. I mean, the Proud Boys, for instance, are still quite strong. They are quite aggressive. And, so on the one hand, I mean, this is not the first time he's made this statement. He's earlier said that I will accept the elections if I win, right? And this kind of electoral denialism and this really, it shows the sad state of affairs within the US, the polarization within the US. And of course, then we have different policy postures of both the candidates.
All right, Bariza, coming to you, Ali pointed towards 2021 and capital. Biden was eager to address the events of January 6, 2021 head on, but Trump moved to change the subject, and the difference in the responses between the two candidates was some of the starkest during the entire debate. Trump did not address these, the whole issues of the 6th of January 2021 directly. He said how the country at the time had a great border and that we were energy independent and that the United States had the lowest taxes ever, we had the lowest regulations ever. He also did not address the speech he delivered to supporters ahead of the riot that happened that day, during which he encouraged supporters to show strength at the US Capitol. Biden said Trump encouraged those folks to go to Capitol Hill, and that while the Capitol was under siege, Trump sat there for around 3 hours watching while staffers begged him to do something. Whose version, Bariza, was lapped up by the US public during this debate?
Oh, absolutely Donald Trump.
January 2021.
Donald Trump, most certainly, he's a master of pivoting. And when you have a failure of moderation where there's no fact checking during the actual debate, he's able to say whatever he wants. He can say all sorts of unfactual things, and people will buy it because there's no live fact checking happening. Biden did not do any fact checking. He was far too slow to come back with anything except for some mudslinging. Which made him look much worse, and it actually made former President Trump look more balanced and measured and calm. The muting of the mics did the same thing. It didn't actually benefit President Biden. It benefited Donald Trump. So any fact-checking that's going to come after the fact is not going to be useful because his supporters are not going to be exposed to that fact-checking in the media, and any fact-checking that's going to happen for former President Trump is also going to be happening in regards to the performance of President Biden. So people who are going to be seeing those, you mentioned hand-wringing earlier. This is the first I'm seeing of staunch Democrats who have been pushing people who have not been on Team Biden last time and specifically this time to vote for him as the lesser of two evils, actually going into saying we need an open convention because he cannot do this.
But do you feel in your point of view that even incidents like this, the 6th of January 2021 and the events that followed at Capitol Hill, the Trump version was accepted more than the Biden version?
I think the Trump version, I don't think it mattered. I don't think that President Biden went after it strongly enough. I don't think that he brought it up or the moderators with their questions brought it up early enough. If it is such a pivotal, which I think it is a huge issue, the state of democracy in general in the United States, it should not have waited until almost halfway through the debate to even have come up as a subject. This was a failure of the moderators as well, and him brushing off any responsibility. His supporters don't think that he did anything wrong, and people who were not his supporters are more focused on Biden not being able to do a good enough job to portray their perspective.
All right. Dr. Tughral, Yamin, coming to you. Let's discuss a little bit on the Trump strategy. You remember the 2020 presidential debate where he was extremely vicious in the way he attacked Biden. He was interrupting him many times. He had shouted on the moderators. This time, there was no shouting on the moderators. There was no constantly interrupting Biden. In fact, he was very meticulous and very he knew what he was saying. For example, Trump follows a Biden remark with a quick snipe saying, I really don't know what he said at the end of the sentence. I don't think he does either, quote unquote. How do you feel Trump managed, at least as far as his anger perception, 2020 presidential debate versus 2024 presidential debate is concerned, and did it have an impact?
So I think the Trump team had prepared him better. The Republicans had done their homework meticulously. That's why he was not showing anger. He was able to remain cool or calm or composed, or he remained on the attack, but he did not. He was not he was unflappable, I would say. So his team prepared him well. Biden's team did a shoddy job. They were not able to prepare Biden for the this brutal, mortal death kind of a combat. So Biden lost. Obviously, he lost. I don't think he would present any improved performance in the next debate. So if things go this way, and if people believe in what Trump is saying, normally the voting public does not go after facts, fact checking, as one of our worthy panelists said should have been done. Should have been done, but nobody cares what actually.
But there was also no public, this time.
There was no
presidential
public.
debate. It was just the moderators. It was just the two presidential candidates. Ali, I'd like to also understand, one of the issues that this started with was the whole abortion issue. Do you feel that Trump's version succeeded to lap people their way, or was it Biden? Because Biden was very incoherent when it came to the issue of abortion in the US.
He was, and Biden has had, of course, a more progressive stance on this issue. So, the Democrats, if one looks at them generally over the past few decades, have, had relatively progressive policies, not economically, but otherwise socially more progressive policies than the Republicans have, right? So abortion is an issue that, in the right of women to choose is an issue that many Democrats can get behind. President Trump, himself, he is not an evangelist, he is not a devout Christian, but he certainly draws his strength from those voters. So he had kind of stacked the judiciary, in a way, and, in the US, the judges stay for life. So he had really, that was his most damning legacy, right? And as an outcome of that, we saw the overturning of this, very long-standing sort of stance on, allowing women to choose. And now it's descended into let the states choose, and it's not going to be a federal issue of women's right. And this is an issue that really, if you look at a lot of the Democrats, who drink the Kool-Aid of America being righteous and spreading democracy and standing for justice around the world, do feel very upset by this, evident erosion of a woman's right to choose within the US. So,
also said that Democrats, I will say, he also said that Democrats support infanticide, among other claims. This is what Trump said, quote unquote.
And kill babies. Will allow, that's what the Democrats want. But that's his fiction, right? That is his fiction. And on the other side, it doesn't help when you have someone like Biden, when he wanted to say 15 million, that my economy has created 15 million jobs. He said we've created 15,000 jobs, right? So he's not been doing himself any favors either.
That I agree with you on that. Bariza, let's talk about the one-liners that Biden had to offer vis-a-vis Trump. Every single thing he said is a lie, every single one. I've never heard so much malarkey in my life. He invoked his, my son was not a sucker, you're a sucker, you're the loser, and also about covering up the affair with the Stormy Daniels. Biden said you have the morals of an alley cat. What impact did these one-liners have on the US audience?
I think it really brought things down for a lot of people who were tuning in and hoping to see some policy conversations. On the one hand, they got these one-liners that, sure, some people were saying they wanted to print the morals of an alley cat on a t-shirt and wear that because that's the only good thing they could take away from the debate. But even former President Trump using Palestinian as a slur against Biden and Biden not coming back on that, it was really quite horrific and just added to the whole train wreck of the situation. And Biden stooping to that level, which people expect from Donald Trump, but Biden doing it was just a letdown for a lot of people.
I agree. Dr. Tughral, Yamin, there is no doubt that Trump would handle the Gaza war. In fact, yes, Dr. Tughral, Yamin, there is no doubt that Trump will handle the war in Gaza much differently than Biden. But in your point of view, how would he have handled the whole Palestine-Israel conflict? He tells Biden during the debate, quote unquote, let Israel finish the job. The suggestion being that the president has done too much to restrain the Israeli government and the military bombardment of Palestinians in Gaza. Trump did not say whether he will back a Palestinian state, but did insist that Hamas's October 7 attack inside Israel would have never happened had he been in the White House at the time. Biden did not offer much. He talked about America's close alliance with Israel and also talked about the ceasefire deal he spoke about a few weeks ago, which of course more or less never materialized. Did these comments have any effect? The next president, Dr. Tughral, be it Donald Trump or be it Joe Biden, will have a massive job to do in the region. But what their performances showed on Thursday, were there any easy answers specifically to the Israel-Palestine conflict? Will the hard truths be difficult to come by for both the Democrats and the Republicans as far as the Middle East is concerned?
Had Trump been in office instead of Biden, he would have done exactly the same. He would have supported Israel to the hilt, perhaps more than Biden. After all, he is the person who crafted the Abraham Accords. He's the one who shifted the US embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He's the one who has been allowing or supporting illegal settlements inside the West Bank and Gaza. So I don't think Trump would have been any different. He would have been even worse. And I don't see any policy shift in the US government in the next 5 years. Perhaps next 10 years, I don't know. But they're going to support Israel. They are not for Palestine.
I think any government, whether it be Donald Trump or Joe Biden, will always support Israel. But to which extent, this is something that we'll have to see depending on who comes into power as a result of the elections in November. Last two questions from the both of you panelists online, beginning with Ali. Immigration section of the debate was quite memorable for Biden's stumble, but it was a very important topic to discuss between the two sides. Trump also did not answer a question about whether the severe immigration crackdown he had promised would involve deporting those who have been in the US for decades, those with jobs, and those whose spouses are US citizens. Instead, of course, he went on to attack Biden, saying that the president bears the blame for crime committed by undocumented immigrants since he took office. Will immigration prove to be a thorny issue now and later for the presidential nominees and also during the eventual elections and for the next president?
Certainly, this is going to remain an issue, and it's an issue that as we see things like climate change, when we see a crisis-ridden world, because, I provide expert testimony for asylum seekers in the US, in the courts, and these are South Asians that I provide expert testimony for. To give an example, and many of them have now started crossing the land border from Mexico. So it's not only all the South, of course, the bulk of them are South Americans, but you also have migrants from other parts of the world, who come through this Dorian Pass. And this is an issue that is going to remain pressing. And it has to do with the irony that capital can move everywhere, but labor can't. The Biden administration has also they might not have been as drastically separating, kids from their parents and not applying as much pressure on Mexico, but administratively they had also, really put a chokehold on immigration. Recently, Biden has come up with very stringent legislation, on the immigration issue, and there are all these thorny legal issues, and this is a problem because the global push factors for migration are only going to exacerbate with time.
All right, final question to you, Bariza. US foreign policy. A former president says the current one is not doing such a great job. The US military can't stand him for a number of reasons. Most infamously, his botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. This is what he says. Russian President Vladimir Putin was encouraged by him to invade Ukraine. Iran, which was broke during his presidency, was freed by him to wage a proxy war against Israel because of him. He also again refused to make a clear commitment to NATO, instead bragging about his efforts to get members up to date with their dues. Biden said that it was Trump who emboldened Putin in his lead up to Russia's invasion. If any, there was an encouraging during his time. And of course, the whole US foreign policy seems to be in a very messy situation, especially when you look at this presidential debate. What point of view emerged stronger in your take?
So people seem to be arguing that Biden's strongest part during the debate, he got stronger apparently during foreign policy. I did not get that impression. He was fumbling just as much. He was mixing up Trump and Putin while he was talking about Putin. Putin has said that it doesn't really matter to him who comes into office. He planned to do this no matter what. I don't think that anything would really have been much different necessarily. Maybe some of the ways that NATO would have functioned. But in terms of foreign policy, I really think that, yes, in Israel and Gaza, Trump would be worse. But does voting for someone who is bad, and I don't know that people are willing to make that give away their vote again in the same way that they did in the last two elections, just to not have Trump based on foreign policy. Biden struggled with his foreign policy stuff as well, even though that was supposed to be his strongest suit. And after, at the watch party that he attended, he seemed to have a good, strong voice. I don't know where his cold went after that. His incoherence was there throughout the debate. So as far as foreign policy goes, they sparred on the Afghanistan withdrawal. People who support Trump will buy what Trump is saying. People who supported Biden will buy what Biden is saying. And you're left basically in the same quagmire that you were when you started. I don't think that anyone really won anyone over. In fact, if anything, Biden lost people, not to Trump, but he just lost people.
So let's see what happens on the 10th of September, when the next and final, most probably, presidential debate is going to occur under the auspices of the ABC. And let's see whether things improve by then, whether the ratings of any of the presidents have declined or have not. We will know in the next couple of weeks. Thank you so very much to both of my guests, Syed Muhammad Ali and Bariza Omar, to have joined us to discuss the US presidential debate, the first of which that happened between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And of course, what were the topics that were discussed and the eventualities. Thank you very much to both of my guests. Let's come to our second topic, and that concerns Iran's snap elections. A total of 61,452,321 voters have the right to vote in this 14th presidential election, and that has been happening since early this morning. The candidates are four in number: Saeed Jalil, a former lead nuclear negotiator; Mohammad Bakir Kalibaf, Iranian parliament speaker; Mustafa Pur Mohammadi, former interior minister; and Masood Pezeshkian, who is a former health minister. The voting is going on. The voting will be ending, I think, if it hasn't ended yet, it will be ending by tonight. There is a time difference between Iran and Pakistan, of course, but there is a manual counting that will go on, and that is why the results will be a bit delayed. What could be the outcome? We have two guests. One, of course, we carry on with through our first segment and now to our second as well, Dr. Tughral Yamin, and our second guest will join us a bit later. He will be a political analyst from Tehran. Let's begin with you, Dr. Tughral Yamin. Iranians are voting for a new president following the death of Ibrahim Raisi in a helicopter crash. And of course, there is a group of four candidates that they have to choose from. Two have already withdrawn their candidature. Polls open at around 4:30 a.m. GMT on Friday and are scheduled to close at around 1430 hours GMT, which I think is more or less as we speak. But the voting time can be extended until midnight. How do you feel has the polling process been going? What are the expectations, A, from the world, B, from the Iranian people?
First of all, I can only answer your question about how the polling has been going on after I read the reports in the newspaper or on the internet, because one doesn't really know what is happening. The Supreme Leader has been saying that he wants people to come in large numbers to vote, because he wants the elections to be credible. As far as the Iranian elections go, we all know that Iran is strictly controlled by the clergy. They have got their guidance council, who vets the presidential candidate, and this time also they did. And as you very rightly pointed out, out of a group of, I think, 80 applicants, only 8 were selected, shortlisted, and then 6, and out of those 6 also
2 have dropped out.
2 have dropped out. So anything in the leadership level which is happening in Iran is always with the blessing of the Supreme Leader, which happens to be Ali Khamenei, and people have been hearing that Mr. Raisi would probably take over for him. So one doesn't really know. One knows, as you mentioned very clearly, that Syed Jalili had been the lead nuclear person who has been involved in the nuclear program.
Of course.
And we also know that Mr. Ghalibaf has been the former Air Force chief and the Speaker of the Assembly, probably. And Mr. Pezeshkian's name is slightly different. Pezeshkian.
He's a former health minister.
Health minister. About him, people say that he's moderate, and probably he is more for rapprochement with the West. So one doesn't, it doesn't go without saying that probably the Iranian religious leadership also does not want any bad relations with the West. We know that relations during Mr. Mohammad Ahmadinejad really spiraled out of control, because he was very combative and he was forever ready to fight, and it really hurt the Iranian economy. They came under sanctions. The nuclear agreement was also perhaps during his time not proceeding very well. So what the Iranian leadership would like to have is perhaps the agreement with the West, which includes the 5 permanent members and Germany, should proceed.
All right.
I don't know what happens with Trump.
We don't know, but we have an analyst who joins us from Tehran, Hamidreza Gholamzadeh. Thank you very much to have joined us. I'd like to understand, first of all, this whole polling process. How has it been going on all across Iran today? Has it ended? Will it be extended a bit further? And how long before the official results start pouring in?
Thank you very much for having me. Yes, we have the extension of the polling actually just a few minutes ago, and it is expected to be extended until midnight, which according to Constitution cannot be extended any further. So the whole election procedure needs to be done only on Friday, and it cannot be after midnight. And it's usually like that people turn out to the ballot boxes usually in the evening and at the final hours, especially at this time of the year, which is very hot days of summer, and because of the weather, many people did not go earlier. But the outcomes are usually out on Saturday noon. By Saturday noon, usually the outcomes are clear or even officially announced by then. So we would be less than 24 hours from now, actually, to know what the result is for the election, which is most likely a runoff election for the next week.
All right. I'd like to understand how the voter turnout has been in these elections, because there were a lot of questions that were being asked in the international media as well as to what will be the actual voter turnout. Was it sufficient? Was it large? Because if we look at the different quotes, for example, by Mr. Khamenei, who told state television after casting his vote that the durability, strength, dignity, and reputation of the Islamic Republic depends on the presence of people. High turnout is a definite necessity. The Interior Minister also said nearly 60,000 voting stations and 90,000 voting points have been set up across the country, with more than 300 voting stations abroad. How has the voter turnout been?
It is expected that this turnout is going to be a little more than the last term. So in recent years, for the elections, especially the recent parliamentary election, the turnout was not the way it used to be, and it was very low actually. The last parliamentary election, and there's about 4 years ago, the other round of parliamentary elections, and 3 years ago for the presidential election, all of them was less than the normal average of the turnout that we were experiencing. Part of that was because of the bad economy, and that people did not find their views at the ballot boxes. So especially during the 2 terms of President Rouhani, many supporters of the reformist camp decided to actually stop using the ballot box as the way to express themselves. And because they were not actually satisfied by the performance of President Rouhani. So they believe that they are against the principalists on the other side of the aisle, and they believe that the reformists were not honest in their performance, and they did not carry out what they have promised to do. So they are not, usually they are the first group that are stopping to vote. For the bad economy, some part of the other side that has as well stopped to vote. It was especially seen in the last election of the parliament. But since after the martyrdom of President Raisi, there was a huge sentiment and sympathy in the country, and it somehow united the society. This tragic incident has turned the feeling a little changed, and it is expected that this term, I think, it would be a little more than 50% of turnout of the eligible voters. So usually the presidential elections in last 13 rounds of elections, usually we can say an average of 60% maybe we can say has been the turnout for presidential votes.
All right. Hamidreza, I'd also like to understand, do you expect a second round of voting? Because if no candidate wins at least 50% plus 1 vote from the ballots cast, including blank votes, a runoff between the 2 candidates is to be held on the first Friday of the election result is declared. Will, in your point of view, the outcome of the elections this year take more time to ascertain?
It is very likely to go for the runoff election, and it will be held on next Friday. So by next Friday, or let's say the Saturday after that, the results will be clear. And according to the Constitution, 50 days after the demise of the president, or any results that demand a snap election, 50 days after that, the president should be actually elected. So everything will be done by not tomorrow, the other Saturday would be finished. And it is clear who the president is. And just a few days after that, he will be sworn in and all the procedures would go. So in a couple of, maybe a month, we can have the next administration in office. So about the results, it is very difficult to actually speculate what is going to be in the results. But according to the polls, it is expected mainly by many surveys and polls and assumptions that the runoff legs would be Mr. Jalili and Mr. Pezeshkian. However, Iranians are a society that makes surprise changes. So you might see a sudden change in everything by the turnout that comes to the ballot boxes, or maybe it would be the same as expected. We cannot say for sure right now.
All right. Dr. Tughral, Yamin, as you've just heard, Hamidreza, he points out towards Syed Jalili and Masood Pezeshkian as the 2 leading candidates in these elections. Now, there are a lot of regional tensions, Tughral Yamin Saab, as far as Iran is concerned, especially vis-a-vis the Middle East, whether it be Israel, whether it be all that is concerned, and around its conflict with Israel. How important will these challenges be for the upcoming president?
I think it's very important to see how the new how the new Iranian president lays out his policies. How does he see the war in Gaza? Would he be more aggressive in trying to solve it or fight it or whatever? And obviously the nuclear policy is also very important because Syed Jalili, as we know,
and there are a lot of Western pressures on Iran's nuclear program as we speak.
Absolutely. Israel also does not want Iran to have a nuclear bomb, and every time the Americans speak about the Iranian nuclear program, they talk about the time that the Iranians need to actually build the bomb, whether it's 5 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, and therefore they want the IAEA to continuously monitor their nuclear program. But the Iranian president is going to frame the Iranian policies for the next 5 years, maybe 10 years. For us, it is also very important because there was a growing warmth in relationship between Pakistan and Iran under late Mr. Raisi's watch. Things had started to improve, and we know that in Islamabad we have a road now which is called the Iran Avenue. So I hope those kind of warm feelings persist when the new gentleman takes over. It's important for Pakistan, for the regional stability, and also how he handles the international situation. That's very goes without saying. It's very, very important.
Let's see. Last question to you, Hamidreza, Gholamzadeh. All these 4 candidates, of which you point out basically towards Syed Jalili and Masood Pezeshkian, have all promised to revive the economy, and which has been affected because of the sanctions that have been reimposed since the year 2018. What do you foresee post-election as far as economy is concerned, as far as Iran-West relations are concerned? Is there going to be any change in Iran's stance as far as its relations with the West is concerned? What measures do you feel these candidates could put forward as far as improving Iran's economy is concerned?
If either Syed Jalili or Ali Baf becomes the president, they will be some sort of continuation of President Raisi's foreign policy. But if it is Pezeshkian, it would be a change, and it would be more inclined towards President Rouhani's foreign policy and some sort of rapprochement towards the West and favoring the negotiation. However, he has not promised that, and he knows that it would be a challenge, especially if it is Trump in office in the United States. And the second point is that unlike Rouhani that was believing only in West, Pezeshkian has shown that he knows that he cannot be exactly the same way, and he needs to talk with the East as well and to consider extension of relations with the neighbors as President Raisi did. And it was just mentioned about the Pakistani relations with Pakistan, which was actually a significant point in President Raisi's legacy. Even during the debate, he had Iranian former ambassador to Russia with him, which shows that he wants to pay attention to East, and because he is an expert in Russia and China affairs. And with that, he was signaling that I want to work with the East as well. But the negotiations with West is something that is not just at the hands of the president. He can have a significant say, but it's not just him, and it is something to be decided by Supreme Security Council. And also, the situation in the United States and the West is not something that can be easily actually handled to be towards negotiation.
All right. Thank you so very much, Hamidreza Gholamzadeh, joining us from Tehran, a political analyst, and giving us your point of view as far as the Iranian snap presidential elections are concerned. And thank you very much, Dr. Tughral, Yamin as well, to have been with us throughout this show to talk about the US election and now about the Iranian presidential snap elections that have happened. And we are all looking at the outcome, especially now, because the outcome of the Iranian elections will come first, and the US, of course, is a bit later in the year. But we'll see what happens as far as these elections are concerned. Thank you very much to both of my eminent guests who have joined me for this part of the show. Let's end with our two stories. The first concerning Vienna, that is still the world's most livable city, third year in a row according to an economist's ranking. The second city that has come on the ranking is Copenhagen in Denmark. The third is Zurich in Switzerland. Melbourne in Australia is fourth. Calgary in Canada is the fifth. Western Europe, as far as this report is concerned, remains the most livable region, but it has seen a decline in stability scores. And of course, they point out to those reasons like the rise of far-right extremism, EU agricultural policy, anti-immigration, and the improvement is only marginal. This is what they say, because of geopolitical conflict, civil unrest, and a housing crisis across most of the cities. The capital of war-torn Syria, Damascus, has again been ranked the least livable city. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, a Russian satellite has broken up in space, forcing ISS astronauts to shelter themselves. A defunct Russian satellite that had stopped working since the year 2022 broke up into more than 100 pieces of debris in orbit that forced astronauts on the International Space Station, the ISS, to take shelter for about an hour, and added to the mess and the mass of space junk already that is in the orbit. There were no immediate details on what caused the breakup of this Earth observation satellite, which was declared dead in 2022. The US Space Command tracking the debris swarm said there was no immediate threat to any other satellite. This event did occur at around 1600 hours GMT on Wednesday and occurred in an orbit near the space station, prompting US astronauts to board to shelter in their spacecraft for roughly an hour, as per NASA. Well, this has happened. We don't know the reasons for this space station for this satellite to have broken into so many pieces. We will get to know, and as we do, we will share with you as well. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of the day's newsroom. It's Friday, so we will inshallah see you on Monday with a new show with new stories that matter to you, us in Pakistan. Till then, stay safe and have a wonderful weekend. Allah Hafiz.